I bet you're asking yourself this question right now. Is Dave saying that I can go from analyzing data with Excel pivot tables all the way to using this machine learning stuff? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Now, you might be thinking, with my response to that, you might be thinking this right now. Even if I've never coded before, and maybe I don't have a strong math background, or I don't remember my math courses from university, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying any professional that's motivated can go from analyzing data in Excel pivot tables all the way to using machine learning to analyze data. Any professional can do it. And here's what you will know by the end of this video. Okay, these are my 4 goals for you throughout this video. 1, I want you to understand why machine learning can be useful for any professional that wants to have more impact at work using data. That's number 1. 2, I want you to understand, I want you to know inside that any professional can do this. Any professional can make the journey. And I'll show you why that's true. 3, if you're a motivated professional, you want this transformation, you want to go from Excel to machine learning, I want to tell you how you can do it on your own, at your own pace, using free online resources. So that's the 3rd thing. And the last thing is, if you're interested in accelerating that journey, how can you do it? So just a brief introduction about me. So my name is Dave Langer, and I have taught hundreds of working professionals all of these types of skills in a live classroom setting. And I'm talking about professionals from all kinds of backgrounds, everything from PhDs in physics that worked for the US Department of Energy, true story by the way, all the way to lifelong people managers, people who, they manage people, they don't necessarily have a very strong technical background. I have taught these types of people and everything in between skills in R and machine learning and data visualization and SQL programming, you name it. So I have a lot of experience in this field. So hopefully you're pumped. I hope you're just like so excited for what we're going to be talking about in this video, because it will potentially change the course of your career. Okay, first up, let's talk about machine learning in action. Why you might be interested in acquiring machine learning skills as a professional, even though you're not necessarily interested in becoming a data scientist or a machine learning engineer or any of that fancy stuff at cool companies like Amazon, Facebook, and Netflix. Okay, so over the course of my career, I have done hands-on analytics at companies like Schedulicity and Microsoft. So not only do I have experience teaching people, but I've also done analytics. I've done it professionally as a day job. So the techniques that we're going to talk about in this video, I have used in my career where I have either directly needed the analytics myself for what I was doing in my own job, or like in the case of Schedulicity, where I was the VP of analytics, I would provide analytics services to various functional parts of the company. But all the techniques that we're going to talk about in this video today, I have used in all of these diverse scenarios. And let me just walk through a few of them here. So first up, way back in the day when I worked at Microsoft, I was a product manager, a PM, in the SQL Server team at Microsoft. And if you're not familiar with SQL Server, don't worry about it. It's a database, doesn't matter. But I did have questions. And when I worked at Schedulicity, I also supported product managers. Now, this is a really super important question right here, right? And I'm going to go ahead and turn my laser pointer on because it's just a lot more fun that way. Okay, so this question right here is super, super important these days for any number of reasons, not the least of which is a lot of businesses are now moving from a one and done purchase model to some sort of recurring revenue model. A prime example of this is in the software industry, where people buy subscriptions, right? For example, you might actually own a subscription to Microsoft Office that you pay for, quarterly or yearly, that sort of thing. So being able to answer the question of what features, okay, if we have customers and they're using our product, and let's use software as an example, and they're using features, which features or combinations of features predict a customer that's sticky, That is, somebody that converts to paying and stays around for a long time. That's a super important question for product managers to know. And using the tools and techniques that we're going to talk about in this video, you can totally do that. Next up, so the last 5 years of my time at Microsoft were in Microsoft's supply chain division, so basically the Xbox division. So I did a lot of analytics in that space, supply chain management. So one of the things that we were super interested in, not surprisingly, was what is known as reverse logistics, right? Which is you take a product that the customer has and they want to return it. They want to reverse that supply chain. They want to give it back to you. Now, this is super important for many companies for 2 reasons. One, returns, the reverse supply chain, is expensive. It cuts into profits. And 2, there's also a brand implication to it. For example, returns are inevitable, but if you can make that experience as seamless and as painless as possible to the customer, you can actually use that to competitive advantage. So asking the question, what factors are predictive of customer returns, is an immensely interesting question in supply chain. And once again, the tools and techniques that we're going to talk about in this video can help you answer this question. So next up, IT operations. I spent a good chunk of my career working in IT, and in particular in big IT shops. So a common cost and customer service concern in IT operations is around incidents. So if you're not familiar with the space, an incident is when something bad happens, basically. Like your website goes down or people can't get into their email, that sort of thing. That's what's known as an incident. So knowing what kinds of factors turn a small incident into a big incident, which is known as escalation, obviously is going to be super interesting to know if you run an IT department. So you can use machine learning to help you answer this type of question. And it can be immensely useful and immensely valuable to your business operations, in this case in IT. Lastly, and this one is my favorite, marketing. So if you're interested in having an impact with data, not surprisingly, there are 2 main scenarios where that happens, right? Either you're talking about the top line, sales, revenue, that sort of thing, or you're talking about the bottom, which is you're reducing cost. Generally speaking, people get most excited about this first thing, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, saving money is great, but for some reason, people don't get as excited about it as the top line, even though sometimes it's actually more effective to worry about the bottom, but let's not go there. So marketing, top line, right? If you're interested in showing how data can really help the company be more successful, your organization be more successful, marketing is a prime place for that. So I spent a lot of time over the past number of years supporting marketing and doing marketing analytics. And by the way, I don't mean Google Analytics. I'm talking about more sophisticated techniques than that. And once again, if you don't know what Google Analytics is, don't worry about it. So here is a question, a real life question that I answered using the techniques that we're going to be talking about today in this video. What demographic factors predict paid conversion? Right? This is a classic marketing problem. I've got a product, I've got a service that addresses a customer pain point. How do I properly identify which people in the United States, let's say, have characteristics? They have factors that are more likely for them to have the problem which my product or service solves. This is a really awesome question. And just as an aside, I use the techniques that we're going to talk about in this video, and I also downloaded some free data from the US government, from the Census Bureau, to be able to answer this question. Super, super interesting stuff. Okay, look at that. 4 different interesting and important business questions, all can be answered using the techniques that we're going to talk about in this video. Great. So now we've got the first why. Why would you want to go from pivot tables in Excel to using machine learning? Because you can answer questions like these, which are a lot more complicated than typically what you can do in Excel by itself. Okay, great. Now, let's talk about something that you might not be aware of, but it's super important. If you use Excel every day, you write code. Yeah, okay. I know you're probably skeptical about that, but let me show you what I mean. Okay, here I am in trusty old Excel. And what you can see here is a few things. One is I've got a table and I've got different data formats in this table, right? I got some number columns here and I've got a character or a text column here. Awesome. Okay. This is a famous data set, by the way, but for the purposes of this video, we don't really care. Okay. It's just some data as far as we're concerned. And this table's got a name. You can see up here, I've named it iris_data. Okay. So there's nothing fancy going on here. It's just a basic Excel table and it's got a name. And every Excel table has a name, whether you give one to the table explicitly or not, because Excel keeps track of all of the various tables and pivot tables, by the way, in your workbook with distinct names. That's a requirement. So I've got a table of data and it's got a name. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that I want to do some calculations on this. So I'm going to do my calculation here in cell G2. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to calculate the average of this column right here, the petal width column. Now, forgive me, I've got my laptop kind of set up a little funky here, so my typing might not be as elegant as you might expect. So let's say I'm going to calculate the average of that column, as I said. So as we all know, we can just go ahead and type in the average function here. Boom. I'm going to go ahead and calculate the average. And what am I going to calculate the average of? Right? I'm going to calculate this column right here, column D. And here's how I can do it. So I can type in iris, and notice that Excel helps me out. It says, oh, hey, you're probably talking about the iris_data table. I can just tab that over, and notice how it highlights the table here, because it's like, oh, okay, you are referencing this object, this table of data. And then I can say, well, I don't want to reference the entire table. I want to reference one column of the table. And notice, once again, Excel's smart and it says, okay, well, here are the pieces of that table, and I want to calculate the petal width, right? So this is a function call in Excel. You're probably all familiar with it. This is code. And by the way, just so you know, in computer science terms, this experience that we're going through right now is what's known as a interpreter or a command line interpreter. So you can think of Excel as an interpreted programming language because this is code, okay? This is code. Now, if I hit enter, boom. See this is what happens, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and go back up here and you can see the code in the formula bar up here. But this is what's happening. I click on a cell and behind the scenes Excel goes, okay, Dave wants to do something. And as soon as I type in equals, Excel says, okay, Dave is going to tell me something. He's going to provide me with instructions. And that's all computer code is just instructions. So it says, okay, cool, I'm going to pay attention. And then I type in all the stuff. And then when I hit enter, Excel says to itself, okay, Dave is giving me some instructions. He's hit enter. It's time for me to read what he typed. And if I understand what he typed, then I will go ahead and interpret what he wrote in terms of operations. So for example, I'm going to go use the average function, and then I need to feed some data into the average function. And he told me to go get data from the iris_data table. But then he said also to use the petal.width column. And then I go ahead and feed that data into the average function, calculate the average, and spit it back out. And that's exactly what you see. That is a command line experience. Okay, that's a programming experience. So just so you're aware, Excel is not only the world's most popular analytics software package, it is also the world's most popular programming language by far. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so hopefully you understand what I'm talking about here now. You write code already. If you're an Excel user, you're already accustomed to writing programming code. You're just not, you just might not think of it that way. Now, let's take another example real quick. I'm not going to drain this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but just to show you the extent of what I'm talking about here. Are you familiar with this function? The if function. This is what's known as conditional logic. You might not have thought of it that way, but this is a well understood computer science programming kind of thing. And people do this all the time in Excel workbooks without even thinking about it this way. This is code. If you write if statements, if you've ever wrote an if statement, or even better yet, if you've ever wrote a nested if statement in Excel, you have wrote code. Make no mistake, you are a programmer. That's part of the first reason why any professional can make this journey. If you use Excel, you're already accustomed to working with tables of data, and you're also accustomed to writing code. You still with me? Are you feeling me? Good, okay, good. So, what does this mean? Well, what this means is you can make the journey from Excel pivot tables to machine learning if you focus on the skills that you already have, the knowledge that you already have, the experience that you already have, and then pick a path that capitalizes on that. And that's exactly what we're going to show you, exactly what I'm going to show you in this video. Because now that we've established a baseline that you know how to work with tables of data and you know how to write code, we're going to see how you can use that knowledge and springboard yourself all the way to machine learning. But this journey is going to be a two-stage process. You need to go from Excel to a milestone, a middle ground here. You just can't go directly from Excel to machine learning the way that I would suggest that you do it. You're going to go from Excel to an intermediary stop along the journey, and that is R programming, the R programming language. Now, don't panic, don't freak out, okay? You totally have got this because, as I said earlier, the trick, the key is to take the knowledge that you already have in Excel and find a mapping that says, look, with the minimal amount of fuss and complexity, I want to take what I know and learn something new that then unlocks machine learning. And that thing is R programming. And let me show you what I mean about that. Now, if you've never coded before, well, actually, we just established that, in fact, you probably have coded before and coded a lot. But let's say you've never coded anything other than Excel, okay? Then you're probably not familiar with this whole environment. And that, for the purposes of this video, that's okay. Just know that this is the environment. Think of this as the equivalent of Excel, right? Excel is this cool analytical tool where you can work with tables of data and you can pivot it and you can write code and all that kind of stuff. This is the same conceptual idea, but for R programming. This is known as RStudio, but conceptually just think of it like Excel, right? Excel is this big bucket of awesomeness. RStudio is like this big bucket of awesomeness. Excel awesomeness, R awesomeness. Basically conceptually the same thing. But here's what I want to show you. Notice that in R, I have a table of data. Now, even though the visual representation doesn't look exactly the same as it does in Excel, conceptually it's exactly the same thing, right? I got 5 columns, some of them are numbers, one of them's text. It is named iris_data. All that stuff is pretty conceptually similar to Excel. In R programming, these things are known as data frames, but they're just tables of data. That's all they are. Now notice this. I've got a little blinking cursor here, down here, right? This is basically, think of it this way. This is just like me going to cell G2, which we just saw, clicking on it, and then the cursor is blinking there, right? And I can just type some code in. And you saw me do that before, right? I typed an equal sign, average, and a bunch of stuff. But notice this. I can do mean, okay? That's a function in R. Now, if you're not familiar, mean basically is the average. So average function in Excel, mean in R, they're the same thing. So I've got the mean function here. So I want to calculate the average of a column of data on this data frame, on this table of data, just like we saw in the previous example. So I can just go ahead and do that. Notice that, oh, hey, look, I get the same kind of experience, right? Remember Excel said, hey, I know there's a thing called iris_data. RStudio says, hey, I know there's a thing called iris_data. Do you want to use it? Yeah, I sure do. There you go. There's a little bit of difference here. I use a $sign, whereas before, remember when I used the square bracket in Excel, then it gave me that list of all the pieces of the iris_data table in Excel. Notice the same thing happens here. And I want petal width. I'm just going to go ahead and click on that. And I hit enter. Look at that. We're just going to go ahead and I'm actually going to just go ahead and do something real quick here. I'm going to show this to you side by side, just because I think it's awesome. Now, the code isn't exactly the same, but notice how similar it is. Now, this is the trick, right? This is the key to everything. If you take your knowledge of Excel, which teaches you a lot, by the way, of working with data and analyzing data, not surprisingly, and map it to R, you're going to be able to learn R quickly and easily. And look at how many things we just recognized between Excel and R. Tables of data in Excel. Tables have names. Cells, columns of data in Excel tables have data formats. You can write functions against the data in the tables. All that's exactly what you do in R. And here's the thing too that you need to remember. This is super important. Depending on how well you know Excel, you can think of Excel like an iceberg. And I know it's a cliche, and I'm sorry about that, but it works. The cliche works. So Excel is like a big old iceberg, right? And most people just use the little bit that's above the waterline. Tables and functions and pivot tables and pivot charts and all that kind of good stuff. But there's so much more to Excel, right? Depending on how much you use it, you understand this. There are things like DAX, data analysis expressions. There's Visual Basic for Applications, or VBA. There is Power Query. There's a whole bunch of complexity and goodness that sits below that waterline, but most people don't use it. So I want you to, once again, keep that as your frame of reference, right? The Excel iceberg. R is the same way. Okay, R is like an iceberg, just like Excel is. And generally speaking, for most professionals, all you need in R is basically the same as all you need in Excel, the stuff that's above the waterline. So in R terms, that would be working with tables of data, using functions on tables of data, creating data visualizations. And if you decide to do some machine learning is a little bit below the water. But the basic, this first stop on the journey, is just like that, right? Your Excel knowledge will make learning that piece of the iceberg that's above the water in R easy, as we just saw here. Okay, so that's the first reason why any professional can make the journey. Your Excel knowledge makes learning R programming easy. R programming unlocks machine learning. Now that you've got that part, let's talk about machine learning, because now we're going to go below the waterline. Hopefully you're with me. Hopefully you believe me. Like, Dave, yep, got it. I know Excel. I can learn R. I'm pumped. I'm stoked. But talk to me about the machine learning. Talk to me about going below that waterline. And that's what we're going to talk about next. Okay, so just a brief story here. So I got my master's degree in computer science relatively late in life. I started my master's program when I was in my late 30s. And I was already pretty well established in my career. While I was getting my master's degree, I took a course on machine learning, and it totally changed my entire career path. Before that, I had been a software engineer, and I had worked in data warehousing and business intelligence, that sort of thing. But once I learned about machine learning, I was like hooked. I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to do analytics. I want to do predictive analytics. Now, when I first got started with machine learning, I wasted a lot of time. I ended up studying lots of different things and all these different kinds of techniques and all these different kinds of tools. And don't get me wrong, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I did have a lot of fun. However, over the years, after first being introduced to machine learning, what I ended up realizing is that I used a very, very small slice of everything I had learned consistently. I mean, there were exceptions where I would pull something off the shelf, but generally speaking, a very small subset of machine learning tools and techniques is what I used over and over and over again. And that's what you should focus on when you first get started, right? You want to make this journey as easy for you as possible to get from pivot tables to using machine learning and driving business value. So don't be like me. Focus on a small subset, what I call the 20% of machine learning, that will give you disproportionate value quickly. So right here, this is one of those things. So we're all kind of familiar with this, either because you're familiar with flowcharts or you're just familiar with what this is, which is a decision tree. And each one of these little circles right here, up here, is basically a question or a rule. So what this one says is, hey, is your title equal to Mr.? And if the answer is yes, you go down this side. And if the answer is no, you go down this side. And then this one says, hey, is your P class equal to third? And it doesn't matter. Don't concentrate on what these things actually mean. It doesn't really matter for the purposes of this video right now. And yes, you go down this side, and no, you go down this side. You get the idea, right? It's a decision tree. It's a flow chart, right? You ask a bunch of questions and you go down, and eventually you arrive at some sort of conclusion. So this is the first type of machine learning that you should start to study. And this is what's known as a decision tree, as I mentioned earlier. So decision trees are a fundamental machine learning concept, what's known as a algorithm. It's a fundamental algorithm. And they are wildly useful stuff. Now, you'll start with decision trees. That's part of the secret of this journey of going from pivot tables to R and from R to machine learning. You start here. And then once you learn decision trees, and by the way, they're not all that complicated, as we'll talk about in a second, you then move on to what's known as the random forest algorithm. And I use the word mighty because this thing is awesome. Okay. I just want to make sure you're clear on this. This journey that takes you from Excel pivot tables to R and R to machine learning, R is a first-class suite tool. People that work at companies like Amazon and Google and Facebook, they use R. They use other things as well, but they use R. So this is a legit technology that I'm proposing that you learn and that you can learn quite easily, as we saw earlier. Just like R is a legit analytical tool, the mighty random forest is a legit machine learning model. You are not sacrificing anything in terms of power or capability by going on this path, right? That's important, right? We want to focus, we want to drill down to just the essence to get you up and running and delivering business value, but we don't want you to like nerf your capability, right? You want to learn the 20% of machine learning, but you want it to be good and powerful 20% of machine learning. And that's what the mighty random forest is. So here's why, in a nutshell, you want to start with these models or these algorithms. So decision trees are quite intuitive, right? We saw this right up here. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And eventually you get down to a decision. Cool, right? Everybody gets it. Flowchart, decision tree, the concept is extremely intuitive. Now, don't panic. The decision tree math is relatively simple. The dirty little secret, and a lot of folks don't like it when I say this, but I do. I'm big on LinkedIn. So if you follow any of my content on LinkedIn, you will see me periodically say this, and sometimes people get irate. The decision tree math, the math that makes the algorithm actually work behind the scenes, isn't all that terribly complicated. And I would actively encourage you to learn it, by the way. However, strictly speaking, it's optional. You can actually train and use and craft and apply decision tree models to your business data effectively without understanding the underlying mathematics. It's better if you do, but it's not strictly speaking required. But just know if you decide to go down that route, which once again I recommend, it's easy, relatively simple math. It's awesome. Now, decision trees are also flexible and powerful. What that means is that in the machine learning realm, space thing, there are many types of algorithms. There are many types of models you could possibly use. The key is that some of these models have more requirements for your data than others. Decision trees have minimal requirements for your data. I mean, basically, they'll take your data as it is and they'll work with it. So they are flexible and they're quite powerful. And then lastly, if all of these benefits of a decision tree can be encapsulated into a volume number, right? A dial on, it goes from 1 to 10. The random forest takes the goodness of decision trees and ramps it all the way up to 11, right? And that is a Spinal Tap reference if you guys are familiar with that movie. So it dials it up to 11 because, not surprisingly, if this is a single decision tree, what do you think a forest is? Well, a forest is basically a lot of trees. And the idea is, at a very high level, is this. If one decision tree is good, if it's powerful and it helps you out, then lots of decision trees, we're all working together, is going to be better. And in fact, that is exactly the case. So the focus of machine learning, the focus of the machine learning part of your journey is going to be whittled down to a very, very small subset of the space. And it's going to be decision trees and the mighty random forest. That's it. That's all you're going to start with to begin with. That's all you're going to learn. You're going to say, look, I'm going to learn how to use these two algorithms, these two models, and I'm going to learn how to use them well. I'm going to learn how to craft good quality models that I can hang my hat on, that I can use to analyze my business and come to great insights. And then Later on, if you need more power, if you need more horsepower, then you can branch out to other types of machine learning, right? But in the beginning, you're going to concentrate on this stuff because of these things over here. Decision trees are intuitive. They're flexible and powerful. Understanding how they work is relatively simple. And once you understand how decision trees work, you then ramp it up to 11 with the Mighty Random Forest. I know that's pretty abstract, but trust me, that is the secret. That's the secret. Start with Excel. Use your knowledge of Excel to bootstrap into R programming. It's actually very easy because everything you know in Excel basically translates one for one to R, because remember, we're focusing on the tip of the iceberg, right? The stuff above the waterline. And then when you dip below the waterline on the R side by going into machine learning, you don't go deep. You just say, I'm just gonna, it's like snorkeling. I'm just gonna put my snorkel on. I'm gonna go just a little bit under the water by focusing just on these two things. And this will get you very, very far. In my own experience, my own hands-on work, by the way, I'm trying to think. There is one other machine learning model type that I do use quite regularly, have used quite regularly other than these two, and that's what's known as linear regression. But we don't need to talk about that today. Just rest assured that the Mighty Random Forest is my default. I actually put a meme out on LinkedIn not too long ago where it's from the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks, and he's got the volleyball Wilson that he ends up talking to as his friend. And the meme is like, me is Tom Hanks, and then the random forest is Wilson, because I said, look, if I was trapped on a deserted island with only one machine learning algorithm, it would be the random forest. Okay, so there you have it. I am a random forest fanboy, not only because it is very approachable to you, but also because it's legit. It's production quality machine learning. It's like real businesses use this to solve real problems all the time. So it's good stuff. Let's pause there for a second because it's been quite a bit of a whirlwind, right? You want to do machine learning because it allows you to answer really super awesome business questions. You can do machine learning because your Excel skills makes learning R programming easy. Once you know R programming, that unlocks machine learning, and you're just going to go just a little bit. You're going to go snorkeling in the machine learning ocean, right? To make that easy and quick for you to get up to speed on very practical, legit techniques. Okay, so that's where we're at. Now, before I go into the free online resources that you can use to self-study and make this transition on yourself, I want to talk a little bit about accelerating the journey first. And the reason for that is because when I show you the free resources, you might be overwhelmed by them. Okay, so let's talk about how you can accelerate that journey first, and then I'll tell you about the free online resources. This is how I make my living, right? I am a solopreneur, and I run a company called Dave on Data. And my focus, my passion, my mission is to make data analysis skills as common as skills with Microsoft Office, Word, PowerPoint, Excel. Because I believe that data literate professionals that know data analysis, can achieve more impact. And that's good for the companies that they work for, and it's good for their own personal careers. And I have created an online set of courses. In this case, it's 2 courses, specifically designed to take you from analyzing data in Excel to R, and then from R to machine learning, just like we just talked about. And as a solopreneur, as a one-man company, I do everything. I do the content development, I do the marketing, I do the graphic design. And what you can see here is the result of my poor Canvas skills. So please don't let the relative crudeness of this graphic detract you. The quality of the content is super high, because what I do in these courses is exactly what I just told you. I take your knowledge of Excel and I map it directly to R step by step and learn and teach you the R language, that part that's above the waterline. Okay, that's the first step. And then I teach you the 20%, right, of machine learning, where we snorkel in the machine learning ocean. And I'm quite good at teaching because I've got a lot of experience at it. So once again, don't let this graphic fool you, okay? What's in this bundle? So this bundle consists of 2 courses to accelerate your journey. First one is R Programming Made Easy. Okay, this is the first step, right? You go from Excel to R. And it consists of 9 hours of video lectures, right? That's what's included in the course. But just to be clear, this is a very hands-on focused class. So notice that there are 8 hands-on exercises in this online course and 4 hands-on labs. And there are video walkthroughs for all 12 of these hands-on experiences, by the way, which is certainly part of the 9 hours. Okay, I just want to make sure you're, I'm not like talking at you for 9 hours in this course, right? You are actually writing code because that's the only way to learn how to code is to write code. So this class is very, very hands-on, and it will bootstrap you using your Excel knowledge into programming in R. Okay, once you're there, then the next part of the bundle is this course right here, Introduction to Machine Learning with R. Now, out of necessity, this particular course has more lecture because there's just more stuff you have to learn. However, it is still very heavily hands-on focused. There are 5 hands-on labs in this course. And once again, the video walkthroughs are part of this 11 hours of video content. Okay, so it's not just me lecturing for 11 hours straight. And this is probably 2.5, maybe 3 hours of the 11 here. So that gives you some sort of sense of scale. This is a very robust introduction to machine learning, just like this is a very robust introduction to R programming. These 2 things will get you from Excel to R to the 20% of machine learning. That's what you get in the bundle. And by the way, I just want to mention this. I have a 30-day refund policy, no questions asked. Okay, so I want you, if you feel like, look, once we get to the free stuff, which we'll get to, and you'll see, geez, that's a lot of stuff, Dave. I would really prefer to accelerate my journey. And I want that for you, but only if it's right for you. So you can purchase the bundle. And if it doesn't work out for any reason within the first 30 days, you just drop me an email, say, hey, Dave, it's not working out. Can I get a refund? Boop, I give you a refund. Just that simple. So that's how you accelerate the journey. Now, I just want you to also know that, yeah, I have a lot of experience teaching people. I'm pretty good at it. But you know what? Just take it from Ray here, right? Ray is one of my students, and he was kind enough to offer up a testimonial. And he has, not only has he purchased R Programming Made Easy, because I released that first, he's also bought Introduction to Machine Learning. So essentially he's bought the bundle. He just bought it one at a time. And you can see that he said he'd be signing up for my future offerings. And in fact, he did. He bought R Programming Made Easy first, and then he bought Introduction to Machine Learning. So real students, real results. So lastly, I just want to talk a little bit about this idea that I want to make it easy for you to accelerate your journey using Dave on Data. So you've got the refund, right? 30 days, no questions asked. Not working out, just let me know. We'll get you your money back. Next up, also know that you get lifetime value. So you get access to these course contents for forever, right? That's just the way I roll. So you get access to the courses. You get access to me, by the way, because I answer any and all student questions promptly. So you just go into the course platform and you say, hey, Dave, I got a question about this. You type it in. I get an email. I see it on my phone. I get back and I answer you as quickly as I can. So you get lifetime access to me for questions, right? So that's another aspect of the Dave on Data way. Now, just to be clear on things, so I bundled my courses together. Not surprisingly, they have a discount, right? That's just standard procedure. So if you go to my website, which is school.daveondata.com, and you look at the bundle, it basically says, look, you get both of these courses for 20% off of the regular price. But since you've been subjecting yourself to me in this video, I feel sorry for you. So we're going to go ahead and say, look, you know what? That's not good enough. If you would like this, if you think that accelerating your journey with Dave on Data is the right thing for you because of the things I just talked about, you can use coupon code YouTube, all caps, YouTube, and you'll get another 20% off of the 20% off. And that's just basically a nice way to incent you to say, look, you know what? Dave's got my back. I'm cool with that. So if you're interested in purchasing the bundle, the link is down below in the description. And you can also click up above here. There'll be a card as well that you can click. So you just go to the page and you type in coupon code YouTube, hit enter, and then you'll get another 20% off. Now, just so that you're aware, you can buy the bundle as a single one-time purchase, and there's also a 3-payment plan. So you can also purchase it with 3 monthly installments, so that way it makes it a little easier on your budget. Cool. Enough about that. Just know that you can accelerate the journey if you want. But if you want to do this using free online resources, we're going to go ahead and talk about that next. Okay, here we are. So remember, the journey is Excel to R, R to machine learning. So the first step, the waypoint, the milestone in the middle is R. You got to take your Excel knowledge and get to R. And this is how you do it. So first up, all three of these books are freely available online. You can just Google hands-on programming with R. You'll find a website. You go there. The contents of the book are just as a web page. Same with this book. Same with this book. So they're freely available online. Now, the way I like to think about this and the way I like to teach these books in terms of this journey is that you start here. And you can think of this once again in Excel terms. Okay. So in the very beginning, when you started using Excel, at least this is the way I started with Excel anyway, is that you just put data in cells. And usually it ends up looking like some sort of table. And then you realize, I can actually put that data in a real Excel table. And then you get goodness like filtering, for example. And then you figure out functions and all that kind of good stuff. And you're like, oh, this is awesome. And that's conceptually what this is, right? It's the very tip of that iceberg, right? The very highest point above the waterline. But then you're like, I could use more power. And then you discover pivot tables in Excel. And you're like, oh, yes, pivot tables are so awesome. Oh my God. Yeah. So that's what this book is like in the R journey, right? So this is base tables and functions and that sort of thing and charts. And this is pivot tables and pivot charts, basically. That's a good way to think about it. And that's what you learn here. In R terms, what you learn in this book is what's known as the tidyverse. And the tidyverse is simply just a way of programming R to make working with data easier. Just like pivot tables makes working with tables of data easier. You don't really need pivot tables. You can kind of cobble them together just using base tables and functions in Excel, but it's a pain in the butt. So that's why pivot tables are awesome. Same thing in R. You learn essentially the tidyverse, and it's like unlocking pivot tables in Excel world. So this is awesome. And this includes things like, conceptually, this includes things like pivot charts, by the way, as well. As we talked about, Excel, it's iceberg, and then there's a bunch under the water. And you can get by with a lot here, right? And in the visualization space in particular, you can get by with just base charts in Excel and pivot charts in Excel. But you can actually do quite a bit more if you're willing to go below that waterline. And if you really want to get epic with your data visualizations in R, then this book you can consider optional, right? So this basically takes the base knowledge of creating visualizations in R with the tidyverse and ratchets it up. And you can think of ggplot2 conceptually as like Excel pivot charts, right? There are ways of creating really awesome data visualizations that make your insights pop. So here you go. So at a minimum, your journey is going to consist of these two books. And what you'll do is you'll see in this book, the code, the R code, looks an awful lot like the code that you see in Excel when you type in equals average or equals if, that sort of thing. Now, just to be clear, this book, none of these books directly map your Excel knowledge one for one to parts of R. I do that in my courses, but I haven't found a book that does that yet that's freely available online. But you will recognize the code, just as we saw earlier. So that's your R journey. Now, let's talk about the machine learning journey. Once again, all of this content is freely available online. And just so you know, I'm going to go back up a slide real quick. I own all three of these books. Right? I own these two books in physical copy, and I also own this book as a Kindle edition, which I purchased. All that to say, these books are super valuable. I mean, they're valuable enough that I was willing to pay money for them. Similarly here. So you'll notice that this one right here, you can see that's me taking a picture of it with my cell phone. I own a physical copy of this book, and this one's laying on my guest bed, actually, as a matter of fact, when I took this picture. But these books are freely available online. So let's go ahead and talk about them in turn. Once again, you're going to start with this book. And don't be alarmed by the title, An Introduction to Statistical Learning. It's typically referred to as ISL. So ISL. Now, this isn't a big book. So it's maybe about this thick. It's not that big. However, you're not even going to worry about reading all of it. You're just going to focus on decision trees and the mighty random forest, both of which are covered in this book. So you're going to take a small book and you're only going to deal with a small subset of the book. And that's where you're going to start. That's how you're going to learn about the algorithms, how they work. There's math, that sort of thing. It's all in this book. Now, once you've done that, then you can move over to this book right here, which is called Tidy Modeling with R. This is the part of the Tidyverse, that thing I talked about on the last slide, that deals specifically with machine learning. At the time of this recording, this book is not in hardback. You can't buy it. It's only available online. I can't imagine that they won't print it at some point and sell it, but at this point, at the time of this recording, it's totally online. It's totally free. You're going to read a small portion of this book. As I said before, you're going to read all of this book. This book teaches you how to do machine learning in R, the why you do the things that you do. And this book is awesome. It is great. It is very, very, I can't say enough about it. It's great. It's written by Max Kuhn. You notice Max Kuhn is also over here. He's a big deal in the R community. So the guy knows what he's doing. So you read this teaches you how to do it. Lastly, you need this book to craft truly awesome machine learning models. You want your decision trees to be as awesome and as useful as possible. This is the book that will help you to do that. And the reason for that is there's an old saying that goes garbage in, garbage out. In the world of machine learning, if you have garbage data going in, you're going to get garbage models coming out. So basically what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have the best data going in to your machine learning models that you possibly can. That's known as feature engineering. And this book is all about how you make the best data to go into your models. Okay. So while on the previous slide, I said, look, that third ggplot2 book over here was optional, only if you needed to make really cool visualizations. Here you need to read all these books. Now, there's a small sliver of this book to be sure, but you want to read both of these books in their entirety. Okay, and once again, they're all freely available online. And that's your journey. Okay, so there you go, right? You know why you can do this journey, and you know how you can accelerate this journey, or you know how you can do this journey all on your own, self-paced, for free if you'd like. So what I want to do now is cover a few common questions that I get, because I also do this webinar, this presentation, by the way, as a real live webinar, and I get lots of questions. So I want to talk about some of the questions that I get. Okay, the first common question that I get in my live webinars, the live webinar version of this presentation, is, do I have to be an Excel expert to take these courses? And the answer is a resounding, unequivocal no. As long as you work with tables of data in Excel and you know about Excel functions and you know how to do pivot tables, which basically everybody does, you're good to go. And even if you don't know about pivot tables, that's okay. I mean, the level of Excel knowledge that you need to make this journey is extremely small. And if you decide to buy my bundle, which will accelerate your journey, I make very few assumptions about your Excel knowledge. Okay, so you don't have to be an Excel expert to make this journey or to be successful with my online course bundle. Next common question that I always get asked is, why R and not Python? And if you've never heard of Python, it's another programming language. Don't worry about it. If you are familiar with the classic R versus Python debate, okay, this is the answer for you. And if you don't know what those two things are and you don't care, just go for a few seconds. It's no big deal. So there's basically, for a business professional interested in having more impact with data, there really is no difference at base between R and Python. You can pick one or the other. And I have a blog post on my website about this, and also another video on my YouTube channel about this, a decision tree to get you to which language you should use. And generally speaking, if you're a business professional and your interest is not in becoming a data scientist or a machine learning engineer, you don't need Python. R is a better choice simply because R is so much easier to learn, as I demonstrated earlier. So that's why I focus personally on R. And you can take that from a former software engineer. I used to be a software engineer. I could use Python if I wanted to. And in fact, I have years ago. I used to use it every now and then, but I haven't had any need for it because R gives me everything I need. So that's why I focus on R, because it gives you everything that you need. And it is, in my experience, the easiest and fastest way to go from Excel pivot tables to machine learning. Another question I get asked a lot, which I mentioned earlier, is there a payment plan available? Yes, if you want to buy the online bundle to accelerate your journey, you can opt for a payment plan, which divides up over 3 monthly payments instead of paying it all at once. So another question that I get asked a lot is, usually it's domain specific. So as I mentioned way at the very beginning, right, when I went through the 4 examples of product management, supply chain, IT, and marketing, I often get asked by people that aren't in one of those 4 areas, hey, will these skills help me? I work in HR or I work in finance. And not surprisingly, as you can surmise, you can guess, the answer is absolutely yes, these skills will help you. It doesn't matter where you work. As long as you've got interesting business questions that can't be easily answered by humans, and you've got data, you can use machine learning to help you answer those questions, as I showed in that previous slide. Another question I get asked a lot is, do I have to purchase any software? Excuse me. And the answer is no. This is one of the most awesome things about this journey. R is open source and it is completely free. And the reason why that's important is because if you've worked at big companies, as I have, oftentimes you have budgets. And depending on what role or what part of the company you work in, if you said, hey, I want to buy a really expensive software package so I can do data analysis using machine learning, the answer might be, no, that's not in our budget and it's not in your job description. So this is great, right? R is completely free. As long as you have the ability to install software on your laptop, it's free. You're good to go. There's nothing to worry about. So I've taught, I don't know how many professionals where they go to their IT people because maybe their laptop's locked down and the IT people install R for them and they're off and running. So the great thing is it's free. As long as you can install it on your computer, as long as you have that ability, or you get somebody to do it for you, like your IT department, good to go. You don't have to ask for any budget. It's all free. It's awesome. Now, the last question I commonly get asked, and this is why I'm saving this one for the last question that I'll answer here in this section, is basically this. Will these skills help me if my goal is not only to be more effective in my current job? And let's say you're a supply chain manager. I'm just pulling that out of the air. So you're a supply chain manager and you want to be more effective in your current job, and you think that data analysis skills with machine learning will help you with that, which they will, trust me, because I used to work in supply chain. But let's say that's not your long-term career goal. Let's say your long-term career goal is you want to move into a data analyst position or the data scientist position. And I often get asked, will these skills help me move into those positions later on? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Now, I've taken a look at a number of data analyst and data science positions, the job descriptions, at companies like Amazon and Facebook. And generally speaking, they're like, look, these are the kinds of things that you need to know. And you need some sort of programming language. And typically R is listed as an acceptable language. And oftentimes they want you to know machine learning. They want you to know how to analyze data and munge data and all that kind of stuff. And that's the kinds of things that you're going to learn either via those free books that I showed you earlier, or if you decide to accelerate your journey with my online course bundle, you will also learn how to do that too. So yes, the answer is yes. But I'm not going to lie to you. if you bought my course bundle, let's say my online course bundle, it doesn't teach you everything that you need to know to do those jobs. It teaches you very useful skills that are part of that job, but it's not everything. So I just want to be crystal clear on that point. However, it's certainly not wasted effort. So if you learn these things and you're more effective in your current role in the business, and then you decide that maybe later on you want to move into a formal analytics role, like a data analyst position, all this stuff will go with you. It all works. Okay, we're approaching 1 hour. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you're pumped. I hope you are stoked for the possibilities of taking your knowledge of Excel, using that to unlock R. Once you unlock R, you then unlock machine learning. Because trust me, any motivated professional can do it. You can do it. You can do it free, totally on your own. You just study those books. They're all freely available online. You just need to invest some time in it. Or alternatively, if you want to accelerate that journey with my online course bundle, you can do that as well. Okay, there you have it. Feel free to ask me any questions in the comments below. Once again, if you're interested in purchasing the online course bundle, the links are below. You can either buy it all at once with a single payment, or you can do a 3-month payment plan. Okay, from Excel to machine learning. No, really, that's it for today. Please stay healthy, and I wish you very happy data sleuthing.